Bitcoin's history, developers have argued over how to best maintain decentralization versus providing scalability, and whether to do so on the base layer or in layers running on top of Bitcoin. In the summer of 2010, Satoshi Nakamoto added an explicit 1 megabyte size limit for each block. It is speculated that this was to keep the blockchain small and accessible to independent full node operators, and to discourage large amounts of spam transactions. Years later, developers argued over whether to change this or to keep it intact, disagreeing on how best to maintain decentralization versus providing scalability through more transactions per block on the base layer. Two camps developed: big blockers who wanted to increase block size for cheaper and faster transactions, and small blockers who wanted the 1 megabyte limit to remain permanent to prioritize Bitcoin's integrity and security. This block size war took place between 2015 and 2017. At face value, this was a dispute about the amount of data being held within each block, but underlying concerns were over who controlled or might later have control over the Bitcoin protocol, the long-term plan for Bitcoin's market share, and how much value should be placed on decentralization. The big blockers believed that cheaper and faster transactions would make Bitcoin more scalable and therefore grow more quickly. While increasing the block size may not have been a permanent solution, it was thought that large blocks would help keep transactions cheap in the short term and allow more time for scaling solutions to possibly develop. This would allow Bitcoin's base layer to compete much more quickly on the global stage as a direct and alternative payment system to companies like Visa or PayPal. The small blockers advocated for Bitcoin's decentralized and censorship-resistant nature. There were concerns about increasing the block size as a scaling solution, fearing that it could compromise decentralization by making running a full node more resource-intensive and potentially leading to centralization of mining power. Small blockers also emphasized the importance of maintaining Bitcoin's security and resilience against potential attacks, and to block censorship attempts by having broad individual consensus through many node validators. Large blocks could lead to fewer entities running fewer nodes, companies hosting nodes in large data centers, and compromising the decentralization of the network. Small blockers emphasized long-term system resilience and having a low time preference when it came to increasing Bitcoin's market share. On May 22, 2017, leaders from 58 companies, including some miners, had a closed-door meeting where they created a two-phase solution. First, activate SegWit, segregated witness, a soft fork changing the way block space is calculated and creating more available transaction space. Second, double the block limit compared to the original SegWit proposal through a hard fork. This was called SegWit 2X, or the New York Agreement. They believed they could resolve the block size war by combining both a soft fork in SegWit and a hard fork by raising the block size and giving each side a part of the solution that they had been working towards. However, any hard fork of Bitcoin is still considered a hard fork. Many in the Bitcoin community saw the New York Agreement as an attempted corporate takeover of the Bitcoin network, raising strong objections to the hard fork. After months of contentious debate, this proposal was suspended in November of 2017. Ultimately, the small blockers kept Bitcoin intact and retained Bitcoin's core principles of decentralization and security. Transaction speed is being developed into layers on top of Bitcoin, such as the Lightning Network. The hardcore big blockers forked off and left Bitcoin completely. This effectively guaranteed that their big block projects were doomed to oblivion. Bitcoin, meanwhile, remains Bitcoin and there is no second best. Thanks for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.